Dr. Gillies, you're a trauma specialist with a Ph.D. in the philosophy of professional counseling, a pastor, and a grandmother. What first drew you into this fight to protect children from medical transition?
It's a long story, but I'll keep it quite brief. Basically, personal history with my first husband, who was a predator, and then education, and in the area of complex trauma, which is what I specialized in treating, and family attachment, those kind of things. And so understanding complex child sexual abuse and the issues surrounding that and how it can predispose children to certain behaviors. So that's kind of what began, and certainly in my private practice, but then I began to focus research more on the issue of LGBTQ. And then I just found myself writing. I started writing in 2015, and so I've written several books, and that's kind of where it started. And yeah, kind of pushed me into where I am today.
You founded Restoring the Mosaic to educate with verifiable research and advocate for the most vulnerable. Can you tell us what Restoring the Mosaic means to you personally?
Yes, so it was interesting coming to that name. What I felt was that, so I'm a pastor as well, and so from a spiritual perspective, what I had seen happening in Canada in the last several decades was this whole issue of a spiritual vacuum and a moral decay, which was causing really the destruction of family. And so restoring the mosaic means to restore rule of law and the supremacy of God. That's one level. But the other part of restoring the mosaic is on a personal level. And in my mind, it was for the children, because they have an identity that's very put together by God, and they're beautiful mosaics, right? We all are, if we think of it, an incredible beings that God has hand woven, in our mother's wombs, and very much like beautiful mosaics. But some of those pieces can get broken, some things can happen in life, and that God would restore us to wholeness.
Your book, The Ultimate Deception, The Truth of Gender-Affirming Care, has become a key resource for many families. What is the single biggest deception you expose in it?
Well, I'd have to say it's the issue of children, their subjective feelings determining their identity instead of biology determining who they are. Really, that's what the whole crux of the issue is.
In Restoring the Mosaic, you address the deeper cultural and spiritual roots of the rapid rise in youth identifying as transgender. What cultural shifts over the past 20 years do you believe have most contributed to this crisis?
Wow. Well, I think, I just kind of touched on that, but I think the cultural shift, it's been more than 20 years, of course. The last 20 years, I would say the whole focus on sexual identity as who we are, not what we do. And sex has become who we are instead of a behavior. So we have all that happening, and alongside of that, we have an education system that has been indoctrinating children with this false ideology and lies. I will say it's lies, that a child can actually be in the wrong body. It's an impossibility, and yet we're lying to our children. And so as we think about what happens to the child day after day after day, 6 hours a day, I'm not every teacher, I'm not suggesting that, but the curriculum is there that is to be used, that is actually to propagate this ideology. And so we really are creating a huge mental health crisis of confusion for our children. I mean, children have gone home to their parents crying. You know, they're in kindergarten or grade 1, go home crying that all of a sudden they're being told that they aren't a girl or they aren't a boy. And so we've been doing that for 2 decades at the minimum. And so we've come to this place where I believe we're starting to wake up. I believe there is a momentum, a movement that has kind of begun to catch people, and they're saying, maybe we've done the wrong thing. That isn't with our politicians, and that's not with our education system or our medical associations or the psychological associations, unfortunately. They are embedded in the ideology. But there are individuals within each of those organizations that definitely are beginning to sit back and think, this isn't looking good. Look what's happened to this whole generation. And I think, and this may be a little digression, but I think we're now coming to a new generation of adolescents coming up who are going, there's something wrong. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to embrace that. And I think we're going to see a radical shift. I really believe that. The other thing I would say that has enabled this whole revolution, since the sexual revolution, is the silence of the church. The church has not been a voice in the marketplace. It hasn't been a voice even amongst parishioners to actually stand up for truth, particularly in the area of the gender dysphoric and transgender. They've been intimidated into silence for years, and so that whole agenda was very successful in creating silent churches, silent pastors, and then we have silent churches that are impotent in a sense. So my prayer is, though, that there is some awakening happening.
As a retired psychotherapist who worked with trauma and gender dysphoric clients, you've publicly stated that most children with gender dysphoria naturally resolve their distress if given time and proper exploratory therapy. What does the evidence actually show about persistence rates and the risks of immediate medical affirmation?
Wow, there's so much there, but what I would say initially, let's go back to 2013 when the actual percentage of transsexual individuals, so adult transsexuals, for natal males was approximately 0.14%, and for girls and natal females, 0.003%. Just a very, very small portion of the population, and that was because children who had questions about their sexuality, and it wasn't called always gender, dysphoria back there. There was certainly a diagnosis of gender identity disorder. It was treatable. And it was treated with behavioral therapy, family therapy, helping the family, because there's extenuating circumstances often, and sometimes there's been a significant trauma on the child prior. And so all of those things were treated, and then the child, well, I'll say children, who were treated, of those, between 88 and 97% of those children never continued with the idea that they were in the wrong body or they were transsexual or even gender dysphoric, because they were treating the emotions, they were treating the symptoms, and they were constructively dealing with parents and parenting. So we had a whole different trajectory until we saw what was happening, or I should say, there's money to be made, right, in medicalizing children, and this whole affirmation only idea that came in, which has just destroyed and mutilated whole generations. Child abuse.
Canada's conversion therapy bans, Bills C4 and C16, have been used to shut down any therapy that doesn't instantly affirm a child's gender identity. How have these laws, in your professional opinion, harmed the very children they claim to protect?
Well, those laws created such a chill effect on therapists, for one thing. And I mean more than a chill effect, because these are laws that if you cross into the area of actually trying to help an individual that comes looking for help, or their parent brings them, and you would suggest that you could change, or that they, not you, but that perhaps you could reduce the unwanted sexual behavior, that could land you with, 5 years in jail and a heavy fine. And so therapists that even had the heart to help children found themselves going, no way. And then, of course, because affirmation-only therapy had become the only way, so from 2015, it's been the only way that therapists are allowed to treat same-sex attracted children, adults, or gender dysphoric. And now we're seeing, the rise in D-sisters and D-transitioners who have been saying, we didn't get help. All of this medical stuff, all of the drugs did not take away the dysphoria, because the distress, which is psychological distress, gender dysphoria is a state of mind, a state of being, a thinking and feeling. But we treat that with chopping off body parts. So it's just incredulous how that has all kind of come around and been such a drastic way of actually supposedly helping people. And the saddest thing is that the people in those professions believe they're actually helping the children. And that's probably the greatest delusion there is.
Even the term detransitioners is somewhat problematic, because the effect of these drugs in many cases is permanent, and these surgeries, it's permanent. It's not something you can detransition from.
You're right. You're right. So really, and there's no help for them. The other thing is, they can't go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. They can't get reversal drugs. They can get implants, or some physical things that will help them look like they maybe once did, but nothing will be the same. Nothing will ever be the same. And of course, for young women, their voices are changed forever. Certainly hair on their face. Like, there are things that can't change, even when they stop taking the hormones, the cross-sex hormones. So, yeah, it's just so much stuff that is irreversible, contrary to what, of course, they were told.
We're now seeing thousands of detransitioners coming forward with lifelong injuries from puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries. What do you say to parents and policymakers who still insist gender-affirming care saves lives? Well,
first I want them to give their heads a shake, because look at what it's doing. No, I would say this is not life-saving. In fact, for those individuals who go through the entire drug regime and surgeries, the bottom line is that suicide is higher after the surgeries, 19% higher, because what happens is they find out that they can never actually be a male or never actually be a female, because that's a delusion. You cannot change your birth sex, and you can't ever feel the other sex, even though that's kind of, I feel like a boy, or feel, they don't know what that is. What is it like to feel like the other sex feels? I will never know what it's like to feel like a man. And so they come to the end almost of themselves with the delusion, and that's where we're leaving them. We're leaving them there.
Why did you decide to join May Day Canada's May 5th Town Hall, press conference, and rally in Ottawa?
I got a call. I've been trying to wake up Canadians for a lot of years to this, and so I'm thrilled when someone picks up the ball, and we're seeing more and more people. I feel I can take a back seat now because more and more people are saying, hey, this is wrong, and standing up. So I'm really happy to do whatever I can.
What message do you hope to deliver directly to Parliament Hill and to the Canadian public on May 5th?
Well, I hope that the message is we're here. We are not going to quit fighting for the children, and that telling the truth is kind and loving. And when you do not tell the truth to children, you cripple them.
Yes. This event brings together detransitioners, former school trustees, veterans, and medical whistleblowers. What unique perspective do you bring to the stage that the other speakers can't?
I think it's my experience, certainly in the area of trauma, childhood attachment, and the deconstructing of families that is so detrimental. One of the things I think that we haven't even touched on is the whole area and the whole issue where young children are being set against their parents. That parents' opinions or thoughts or, just the reality, stating the reality that yes, you're a boy or you're a girl, that is enough to set teachers against parents, and because the children are so susceptible and so vulnerable, they're caught. Who do they believe? And parents are getting the low end of the stick, let me tell you, and it's dividing families in such horrific ways.
If you could speak directly to Prime Minister Carney and every MP on Parliament Hill, what 3 specific policy changes would you demand to protect Canadian children?
Well, I think the first one would be that we demand do no harm. That used to be a motto, and it used to be a practice, do no harm. So number 1, check the research. Do not throw out this good research that is showing, and it has been shown to harm children, and that our politicians need to take a step back and take a good long look at the CAS report, other reports coming out of Europe, and look at what other countries are actually doing in this whole area, because they have, if you want to say, seen the light. They have begun, and they're down the road to acknowledging the disaster, because this is really a momentous step in the dark.
How should schools, doctors, and therapists be held accountable when they socially transition or medically transition minors without parental knowledge or consent?
Oh, you're pushing my buttons. I know some of them think they're doing this in the best interest of the children, but there are others who are right there pushing an ideology. And quite honestly, I think they should be totally held accountable legally. I think there should be lawsuits. I think parents and even adult children who have been through this should be taking them to court and suing them. The education system itself, in my perspective, needs to be fully accountable in whatever means that was. And I hope that will happen. And then also the medical associations. So I see some pretty big lawsuits coming down the pike.
Many Canadian families feel terrified to speak out because of the climate of fear created by activists and the media. What advice would you give parents who are currently watching their child being pulled into this ideology?
Well, if their child is coming to them, talking to them about considering or saying they're in the wrong body, I really encourage that parent, this is your child's life you're talking about. Get them out of the school, if you can get them out of the school system, but at least get them out for 2 or 3 or 4 months. Because if it's just beginning, and what will happen is, at the end of that time, honestly, they will have rethought the whole thing. It's like, because it's so fresh in their mind, you take them out of that fishbowl where they're being indoctrinated every day with it, even for a few months, and it will actually begin. And spend time with them. I mean, here's the other thing. You need to spend time. Maybe you can go on an extended vacation. What parent can do that? But really, it's so serious. You have to look at this as a life and death matter for your children and do whatever you can to get them away from those who are influencing them.
After years of speaking out, writing books, and facing backlash, what gives you hope that Canada can still turn this around and protect the next generation?
I think there's a grassroots movement right across Canada that is beginning to say no more. No more to abusing our children, no more to using our children against us, and no more to the destruction of our families. And I think there's also this movement, I think, perhaps maybe with older children, youth, who have been lied to for so long, that they are actually seeking truth. And I hope they will seek it from our churches. I hope they will seek the ultimate truth, because to me they are in so much need to hear what is good and right and moral and kind, and it's not what they've been hearing for years.
This is my last question, and thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
For the families watching this interview or attending the May 5th Town Hall, what's your final message of encouragement to them?
Keep on keeping on. Keep fighting for your children. Keep fighting for the children of Canada. But also keep standing strong for truth. So here's my motto. It's stand firm, walk cautiously, and live courageously.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.